Where you are, sir? Everybody here that's here? Great. Well, thank you for joining us here today. Today, the Government of Saskatchewan is joining with the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations to call for the federal government to take immediate action in researching any undocumented deaths and burials in residential schools in Saskatchewan. This is following the tragic discovery of 215 children at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia. The discovery of the remains of these 215 children is a haunting reminder of the horrific reality that too many Indigenous children faced, a stark example of the grim legacy of residential schools in our nation. And with an estimated 20 federal residential schools that were operated in our province of Saskatchewan, meaningful reconciliation in our province must include research that the FSIN has called for already into the estimated hundreds of children that did not return home from when they attended these institutions. This includes radar ground search of known and suspected burial sites that the FSIN has identified. Saskatchewan, as a province, is prepared to support this work through the Ministry of First Nations, Métis and Northern Affairs in collaboration with the FSIN and all First Nations communities and individuals in Saskatchewan. And while the residential school system across Canada does deserve a national approach, Saskatchewan is prepared to move forward with this effort in collaboration with our Indigenous community, with our Indigenous people, and most certainly we are going to do it whether the federal government moves forward or not. So with that, I'll take any questions. Sorry, I can't. Well, I think there's many steps that need to continue to be taken in the whole reconciliation process. But I think right now one of the most immediate steps is the step that the FSIN has called for, is for us to work collaboratively together, and we support this work as a province, but to work collaboratively together to identify if we do have any similar situations in Saskatchewan as to what we have identified this weekend in Kamloops, British Columbia. Do we have any unmarked remains that are at some of our former residential schools sites here in Saskatchewan? And so we want to work with the FSIN so that if there is some areas, we will most certainly look into, can we bring in some technology that will identify if there are remains there, and most certainly start the process of some closure for too many families, quite likely here in this province as well. Yeah, it would be it could be all of the above or parts of the above. I talked with Chief Cameron over the weekend a couple of times, talked with National Chief Perry Bellegarde as well as I talked with a number of individuals in and around the community where I live, some that had attended residential schools in the years gone by, and we most certainly, I think, are here today to work collaboratively with our Indigenous people, Indigenous communities, and the FSIN on the initiative that we see in front of us, which is if we do have similar unmarked sites with individuals in them here in Saskatchewan, we want to work as quickly as we can to identify who may be in those sites and to start to provide the first steps of closure for some families. And these are families that are our neighbors and our friends, that are our missing brothers, sisters, cousins, relatives, friends.
How long are you prepared to give you that number before you would make a decision to go ahead yourself?
We're working collaboratively with the FSIN as we speak. So if the federal government is going to take the initiative to lead, which I believe this is in the federal purview, and I would hope that they will, and I feel that they will, but the province, everyone should know, the federal government, the FSIN, all of our Indigenous people and communities should know that the province is most certainly here to assist in any way that we can to expedite this process.
Have you heard back from the federal government yet?
No, I haven't heard back from the federal government, but as I said, I've talked with the FSIN chief, Bobby Cameron, as well as Grand Chief Perry Bellegarde.
there's quite a large amount of shoes that have been
Right.
front steps here. I'm not sure if you're going to come in through, but I believe you may have seen it. How did that strike you when you saw that?
Yeah, I haven't seen the display of honor that we see on the front steps of the legislature. I understand there's numerous displays across the nation here today. I will be seeing it as I just arrived into town here now, but I will be seeing it before I leave the legislature here today. And as far as how it will make me feel, I won't, circumspect how I'll feel when I go look at these shoes, but I'll probably feel very much the same way as I did over the course of the weekend when I talked to some friends of mine as they recollected some of their memories of not only residential schools, but even visits to this particular school in Kamloops. So, thank you. I think to those folks that have taken the time to, put this display in front of our provincial legislature. This is a time for all of us. In this province and across this nation to, recognize our history, to educate ourselves if we haven't done so already on our history. Some is positive, some is not so positive, and we need to do right where we can.
How soon can you start this effort to search the sites with federal government's help or without? How soon would you like to see you start this summer? What do you think is realistic?
There's a lot of there's a lot of effort that needs to go into this. We need the FSIN is already, and I've talked to a number of folks that already have areas identified where they feel we should look. The FSIN has prioritized a number of locations, and I think through verbal discussions, there's individuals that have prioritized certain areas of those particular sites. We will use whatever resources we have in government to assist, to support, and to ensure that this initiative that at this point in time is being led by Chief Bobby Cameron and the FSIN, that we are there to assist, to help, to support in any way that we can to expedite this process, but also to make sure that the process is a worthy one and it is an accurate process. So there's many things beyond just taking a radar piece of equipment out and looking across the sites. However, that will likely be one of them, but there's many conversations that need to happen, and this is a time not for the provincial government to take a lead. This is a time for myself and the provincial government to listen, to support, and to assist in any way that we can.
This orange shirt day in the schools, kids are wearing these shirts. This happened just before, this day. What would your message be to parents, families, and kids learning about this and learning about what Saskatchewan's history is with residential schools as well?
Yeah, Canada's history is Saskatchewan's history, and I would ask kids across this province just really for two things. One is to educate yourself about what our history is when it comes the good and the bad. And when it comes to the residential schools, this most certainly is one of the, if not the largest stain on Canadian history, and it is right here in Saskatchewan in our Saskatchewan communities. And two, I would say just remember that these are family members that went away to school forcibly and didn't come home. And they are someone's brother, they are someone's sister, they are somebody's friend that just didn't come back to school one day, didn't come back to their home community one day. These are not statistics. It's not of the 150,000 people estimated that attended residential schools in this nation. They're not numbers, they're statistics, they're family members. And they're family members and their neighbors of, for many of us, in communities very close to us. I myself remember as, there's residential schools in this province, in Prince Albert, that operated until the mid-90s. And I can remember as a child playing sports against the Indian Residential School in Prince Albert, knowing many people my age from Atakakoop and from Whitefish First Nation or Big River First Nation that would attended the Indian Residential School in Prince Albert. So it's not that long ago.
I know that the phone lines that people can reach out and access if they need support. I was just wondering, is there any avenues that the provincial government is looking at for support for residents here in the province?
Right now, there will be many conversations, I'm certain, that will happen as we find our way through the next weeks and months. Right now, I think the focus is on supporting the FSIN initiative of doing our due diligence with respect to, do we have a similar situation at one of our 20 sites in Saskatchewan, our Indian Residential School sites, as they discovered at the Kamloops site in British Columbia. That's the initiative that the FSIN is prioritized in the next number of weeks, and that's the one that we want to support and assist with in any way that we can. But most certainly, with this, and as you'll see out front of this building, this draws up a lot of personal emotion in far too many people. And we will look at what opportunities we have to support Saskatchewan residents. Yeah. There's been this has been a walk for all people, Indigenous or non-Indigenous. And if you think back to when I just mentioned some of the last residential school closed in this nation and in this province in the mid-90s. Beauvais as well, I think, was open until close to that point as well. After that, we saw some legal action that had made its way through the courts, and then ultimately we saw the Truth and Reconciliation Committee come together, do their report, release their report, and that has guided much of what you have seen provinces and the nation and communities and people. It has guided their steps over the course of the last number of years. Just in this province, I believe we have 34 recommendations that are in the purview of where the province can make a difference. We're acting on 28 of those with respect to some of our Indian residential burial sites. We have been protecting those sites as part of the recommendation that came from the Truth and Reconciliation report. So this has been a walk through our past, our collective past, and I think this weekend it's very fair to say that we have taken a step backwards, but very quickly are going to work together to continue to take steps forward with reconciliation in this province. This isn't easy. This isn't easy for a nation.
Today we started school vaccinations. Get your thoughts on what you think of how that's going to roll out and what you're hoping to see.
Well, we're hoping to make vaccines available to all of those that choose to take a vaccine, and we have been very adamant and strong in our encouragement of the reasoning behind why people should get vaccinated. So this is just part of a real broader initiative of access to make vaccines as accessible as possible to as many Saskatchewan residents, 12 and over, as possible. And if you walk back through the course of the last number of months, we started in the very early days in our far northern communities and in our long-term care homes when we had lower numbers of vaccines, possibly a little more time to provide those to those rural and remote locations, as well as our long-term care homes. This is the other end of that access, as we now have vaccines available to everyone 18 and over in the province, and now even starting some of our second doses, that we are now, rather than asking parents to bring their youth, their adolescents to the vaccination centers, we're also going to be offering it in the school. So this is just simply about access, providing that access for as many Saskatchewan residents to have a vaccine, to take a vaccine when it's offered to them, and that's simply what this is about. The Saskatchewan Health Authority does have a vaccination program that it does offer in our school system, so this isn't foreign territory to them. They are really repeating what they already do on an annual basis. But when you look back at the last number of weeks and couple of months now, what a monumental effort by all those involved in our, directly in our Saskatchewan Health Authority, indirectly with all of those affiliate groups that are offering vaccines as well. We see the Saskatoon Tribal Council operating a very successful, highly successful vaccination clinic in Saskatoon. I was in Lash this spring. They're feeling very confident about the access to vaccines and testing equipment that they have in that community. And we see now our pharmacists coming on board as well, offering vaccines in community after community. So what a Herculean effort, and just very appreciative of everyone involved.
There's still a lot of adults that haven't been vaccinated yet. Why did the government decide to offer to kids before the more adults vaccinated? Why did you decide to do that?
Well, we're not going to force people to be vaccinated. We do have access, across the province, and have for many weeks in the case of most age groups. I myself was 47 still. Been vaccinated a number of weeks ago now. So it has been accessible for for many adults across the province for a number of weeks. Continues to be accessible. You don't fall off the accessibility list. So if you have been on the fence, I've said many times, and you haven't received your vaccine, I've said many times, you should go out and make an appointment at your local pharmacy. Give the SHA appointment-based system a call, or go find a drive-through, of which we're going to be utilizing in the days ahead as well for our second dose strategy. This is, ultimately, I know there's the debate about vaccines, but in my mind, the debate is we need the vaccines, and we need you to take a vaccine so that we can safely open up our communities and our society. Well, there's a few reasons. One is to get as many people vaccinated as possible. Two, we still do have, in the case of our students that are in school, large numbers of people in fairly, fairly safe, but large numbers of people in buildings. But three, I think it's fair to say as well that if we were to go to the schools to vaccinate the kids at the end of June into July, we might not find them in the schools as they head out for the summers. And so we have a month now to get into the schools to offer this vaccine to our students across the province. It's a great time to do that. It also coincides quite nicely with them coming back to school in September, being at their 3 to 4 month period where they'd be available for their second dose if they choose, and we'd encourage them to do that. Yeah.
Basis. I'm just wondering what you think accounts for that, and whether it makes you rethink any
Right. No. We will see cases bounce around. They're up slightly this weekend, down a little bit again here today, and you're going to see case numbers move around from time to time. And what we are really watching at this point in time is our hospitalization numbers, which continue on a downward trajectory, and we're hopeful that they will continue to go down. And I had said, I believe it was last week or the week before, that many of our folks that are in hospital are ones that for one reason or another are not vaccinated. As we move forward, that reason for not being vaccinated will be narrowed down to someone who may not actually be able to take a vaccine, or someone who has chosen not to take a vaccine. And that is why when you look at the data on the fact that if you do receive a vaccine, if you do receive 2 shots of that vaccine, your chances of severe illness, hospitalization, and ultimately a fatality from COVID are greatly reduced from if relative to someone that does not receive that vaccine. So we are, the numbers will fluctuate. There will be some that have COVID that will be infected with COVID that have been vaccinated, some that will not. But ultimately, when we get to a situation where the vast majority, we'd preferably like to see virtually everyone vaccinated, but the vast majority are vaccinated, we are not going to see the threat to our healthcare system. And the ones that do come in will be ones that have made a conscious choice for some reason not to make themselves accessible to that vaccine.
There's some people who are probably going to see the beginning of a reopening plan as a green light to get back to normal more quickly than you and your public health experts might like to see. What kind of advice or what kind of urging would you say to those people? It is as a green light.
Well, we hear from all sides. Let me say that, and I sign a lot of books of letters that come in, and I try to read each and every one of those. And there will be many that think we're moving too fast with our reopen plan, And to those, I would say it has been proven to work in other countries. There are many that think that maybe we're moving too slow with our reopening plan, and I would say to those, they would think we're moving too slow, and I would say, you know, we do need to be cautious. We do need to be cautious because we do still have some case counts in our community. We still do have over 100 people in hospital here in Saskatchewan, and we just, you know, are finding our way through a very ambitious and aggressive vaccination process, and we're achieving the benchmarks that are there. But we can't get ahead of ourselves in ensuring that we are, making every effort to keep people safe as we reopen and get back to some degree of normal here this summer. In saying that, Saskatchewan people are, they are doing the right thing. The vast majority are following the public health orders. I don't doubt that there will be some that will be a little anxious and want to get going a little sooner. But I would ask them to, continue to follow the orders. They do work, and continue to, if you haven't already, continue en masse to get out and receive not only your first shot, but when it's your turn, then ultimately get your second shot. This is our path through this. We haven't had as an effective tool as vaccinations throughout the course of the past year. This is our way to find ourselves back to normal. This is our way to have any hope of having a very loud and boisterous crowd in Mosaic Stadium, one that would make the Montreal Canadiens crowd of 2,500 pale in comparison to what Rider Nation will bring to that stadium down the street here.